Welcome to another presentation of Under the Mackroscope. Today, I want us to take a close look at the demise of education in America. Yes, the demise of education in America. We're currently witnessing one of the most tragic events in American history. No, I'm not talking about attacks from some foreign power or invasions from outer space. I'm talking about the absolute destruction of quality education in the United States of America. If you do not see it, it's probably because you have become so accustomed to pitifully administrated and crippling school systems that you have come to accept a blight as normal. It is not and should never be acceptable for our children to suffer the loss of their opportunities to prepare themselves for a happy, healthy, and prosperous life. That happy, healthy, and prosperous life is exactly what God intended for us to enjoy. How do we know this? Just read the account of creation in your Bible. It clearly points out that God placed us in a delightful place where everything was perfect. We allowed the devil to persuade us that God had lied and that if we disobeyed him, the consequence that God had warned us about, death, would not happen. So here we are, basking in our own stupidity because we bought the big lie. It doesn't matter what lie the devil puts out there, he will always find someone who is dumb and stupid enough to believe it. We are so focused on our own bellies, primarily stupid politics, we're cutting off our noses to spite our stupid faces. Now, just what does all of this have to do with education? In a word, everything. The lack of quality education over the past 50 plus years has turned America in large measure into a pack of brain dead zombies. Just take a look, a hard, long look at some of our elected officials and listen, if you can stomach it, to some of their woefully ignorant rhetoric. No one seems to know anything about searching for right instead of wrong. The attitude has seemingly become, I'm going to get mine, whether you get yours or not. And if you are not careful, I will grab as much of yours as I can, even if it means taking your life. Quality education prepares you to use your God-given gifts and talents to advance in righteous fashion to that special place where God has already prepared for you to enjoy that happy, healthy, and prosperous life. The problem is we would rather scheme, plot against, and manipulate each other, which is a lot more work than just doing the right thing and let everyone benefit. There was a time when education was the primary goal of most of the people in our country. Older people, many of whom could neither read nor write, would tell the younger generations to go to school, get your education. No one can take that away from you. Now, in this so-called modern era, parents are letting their children run wild in the streets with no sense of direction or training. Many times, parents are in the streets with their children, doing the same ungodly things that are sending their children to prison and often costing them their lives. There has never been so miserable a time in the history of this nation where children account for such a large portion of murder and other horrible crimes as we're witnessing right now as we speak. There are numerous programs that address troubled youth with good intentioned volunteers doing what they can to help children change the dangerous course that they're on. But there are too few, if any, parents included in those groups of supporters. It is not the responsibility of the police, community groups, and other support agencies to raise our children. That responsibility belongs exclusively to the parents. Those support groups should be just that, support. Children growing up in less than wholesome circumstances need all of the help that they can get. School has always been that safe haven for our children, a place where they can put aside all of the trials of their young lives and just be children. Now, due to our carelessness and irresponsibility, that safe haven has become a hellhole of confusion and strife. How could that happen? We must start with what we have done to teachers. Yes, what we have done to teachers. Teaching is a calling. Let me say that again. Teaching is a calling. You don't just wake up one morning and decide that you're going to teach. Called teachers are the ones who can reach into that troubled child and help him discover who he really is, as well as discover the gifts and talents that God has given him, while at the same time helping him to strengthen those gifts and learn how to use them to the benefit of mankind. These very special people have been overlooked, overworked, underappreciated, and underpaid for decades, and no one seems to want to do anything about it. As a result, called teachers are retiring and leaving the profession because they cannot afford to make it in today's economy. That should never have happened. It puzzles me greatly to look at how other professions have grown in such prosperous fashion, while teaching has actually been kicked out of the ranks of professionalism. Teachers are not regarded as, quote, worthy professionals, even though they are largely responsible for helping the rest of society advance to higher heights. The best doctors, lawyers, engineers, architects, and yes, other teachers have all had the blessing of called teachers who help them to become their best self, helping to chart the course toward a better America and a better world. So many of those who have benefited tremendously from the wisdom of called teachers have yet to lift one finger to help change the course of a downtrodden, most crucial segment of our culture. We have passed on to our children the dumb and idiotic notion that anybody can teach. How ridiculous to even suggest such a lie, let alone make it a, quote, standard. To the ignorant, all teachers do is babysit. That may very well be the case for some who call themselves teachers, but look at how they were able to get into a classroom in the first place. These vultures, I call them, are in our classrooms because called teachers were forced out due to their, quote, strange need to earn a decent living. What about that? Qualifications are being watered down to allow lower skilled people to apply for positions, and school systems are taking them because there just isn't anyone else. How sick is that? The quality of education in any community is a direct reflection of how much parents care for their children. Now, before some demented dim-witted, ill-advised mouthpiece starts to yell at me, "How dare you challenge how much I love my children?" Please consider some facts. Clothes, purses, shoes, jewelry, cars, and such mean more to us than quality education for our children. When we shop, we closely examine every product, looking at the brand name, the quote quality of the material, and how well it matches up with what everyone else is wearing. We like to be trendy, you know. When we buy a car, we go through every minute detail from the hood to the trunk, the expected mileage, the ranking of one car versus another, and will sign on the dotted line even when we know we can't afford it, trying to keep up with the Joneses. Many of us have paid top dollar for knockoffs of some products because it meant so much to us to make sure that we looked like we were, quote, up with it. But when it comes to having the best teachers that our children deserve, the level of importance changes drastically. Call teachers are being replaced by drug dealers, drug addicts, and pedophiles. Look at the numbers of cases of those vultures being charged with drug use, drug distribution in our schools, child molestation, and child pornography. There are idiots who would dare say out loud, "Oh, it really hasn't been that many." One is too many. Hear that. One is too many. Now, let me ask you, Mr. and Mrs. Mouthpiece, how dare you vote repeatedly to elect and re-elect legislators who have been systemically killing education for the past 50 plus years? The quote game that some children were playing not long ago, slap a teacher, they were just following the example of their parents and legislators who have been slapping teachers consistently for decades. Some parents have said they would be willing to pay more taxes to give teachers a raise. But that is not true for the majority because they keep sending the same education killers back to the legislatures throughout the country. That simply means that someone is lying through their teeth. Teachers have to pay the same prices for groceries and everything else that the rest of society has to pay. Yet today's teachers are expected to live off the same salaries that teachers were paid 10 or 20 years ago. Go figure. It was said just a few years ago that the quote average salary for North Carolina teachers was $50,000. Note that word, average. When people talk in average figures, they simply mean that they do not want to tell you what the real figures are. At that time, that $50,000 average came from the fact that a first-year certified teacher was making about $35,000 a year. That means that in order to arrive at a $50,000 average, an experienced teacher would have to make $65,000 per year, which probably took around 35 or 40 years to reach that point. Add those two salaries together and divide by 2, and there is your $50,000 average. Now, to the average citizen, and the legislators know this, when they hear an average of $50,000, that means that all teachers make $50,000 per year. That is not a stretch because people were actually saying that teachers make $50,000 per year. Why are they complaining? That statement alone indicates that the first year teacher is being cheated out of $15,000. So the starting salary should be at least $50,000 per year. The starting salary should be at least $50,000 per year, and North Carolina and other states can actually afford to do this. Anyone who says otherwise is a liar and a fool. Our children deserve the best education possible, and we can give it to them, but we cannot give it to them without having called educators guiding them toward their future every day that they're in school. These are the people, these called teachers, whom our children spend more of their awake time than anyone else. These are the people who open up our children's minds and help them to see who they are and who they can become. It's a gift. These are the people, these called teachers, who hug our children when we can't, because many times our children hide their pain from us to prevent looking like a, quote, burden to mom and dad. These called teachers are the people who nurture the best that is in our children, when often even those at home focus on what they perceive as the worst that is in them. These called teachers are the people who purchase supplies out of their low pay because they know what it takes for their students and that there isn't likely any other way to get what they need to reach the children they love so much. The legislators are not going to do it, and it doesn't appear that enough parents have a sincere desire to help, even though these things are for their own children. Thank God for those parents who care enough about their children to lend a helping hand as often as they can. The 2022 fall opening of school nationwide is probably the worst in recent history. Every school district seems to be fighting to fill teacher positions, even offering, quote, big sign-on bonuses for those who, quote, qualify. Those qualifications, if you can call them that, have been so watered down, it's sickening and overwhelmingly demeaning to the profession. Did it ever occur to any of these legislative geniuses that if they just paid teachers a professional wage, that they wouldn't need to dangle insulting bonuses to try to attract people, many of whom should never be in a classroom with children, even their own? A representative from a national educators organization was asked by a reporter several weeks ago how he viewed the widely publicized teacher shortage. That representative's response stunned me because it was right in line with what we have been discussing in this entire presentation. He said this: there is no shortage of teachers. There are plenty of good, dedicated, well-trained professionals ready and willing to step up and do their duty. There is, however, a severe shortage of respect and appreciation for some of the most important people on the planet. Currently, there are protests and strikes on the part of educators because no one is listening to their urgent cries. The prevailing attitude seems to be, we don't really need to pay any attention to them. They aren't going anywhere. They're just teachers. Just teachers. Ponder that thought, if you can actually call it thinking. One pitifully ignorant legislator was quoted as saying several years ago in reference to a teacher rally, these rallies are nothing but an attempt to get more Democrats on the legislature. Really? How stupid is that? Education is not a Democratic or Republican issue. It is a most important staple for the survival of our nation, or any nation for that matter. What is it going to take to wake us out of our brain dead stupor and give education its rightful place among essential professions? We cannot continue doing what we have been doing for the last 50 plus years. Our children deserve better, to say the least. For those Einsteins who are still holding on to that idiotic notion that anybody can teach, let Bob the plumber do your next colonoscopy, since he knows a little something about drains and pipes. Just another Mackian observation. Thanks for listening. Follow me on Facebook at Under the Mackroscope. You may also follow me on YouTube at Mack Mcrae. Please subscribe and share. If you wish, you may make a contribution of your choosing by using the QR code on the screen. You may also write to me at P.O. Box 403, Pineville, North Carolina, 28134. See you next time. And remember, under the macroscope, we take a closer look.